Innocent people are sitting in prison right now in Missouri. One of those people will have another day in court on Monday under a new law that allows prosecutors to correct past wrongs. His name is Kevin Strickland.
I would like to get a sense of what it does to someone to be behind bars for 43 years.
I think I've been destroyed.
What he calls his destruction is not just the result of decades in prison. It's decades in prison for a crime he says he didn't commit. In fact, the same prosecutor's office that tried him for a 1978 triple murder has since determined he's innocent.
The Jackson County prosecutor found that Kevin Strickland should not have been convicted. The eyewitness said she got it wrong. Kevin Strickland had an alibi. The actual criminals confessed to the crime and said that Kevin Strickland wasn't involved. Law enforcement officials, the prosecutor, the judge all said that Kevin Strickland should be released. And you'd think that would make a pretty good case for him. So you may wonder, why has he spent 43 years behind bars? And why is he still there right now? Unfortunately, he's not the only one who's gone through something like this. Lamar Johnson has been in prison for 26 years, even though the prosecutor in St. Louis found that he didn't commit a crime either.
What have you lost over the last 26 years?
Time. There's a closeness between, especially with a father and his daughters. And I missed that. I missed being able to be a part of their life.
Jonathan Irons spent 23 years in prison.
Last year, we met Irons in prison.
What would it mean to you to finally walk out?
It's like I can finally live my life. I want to help other people.
Now, at age 40, he finally gets his chance.
Ricky Kidd, 23 years.
Freedom. After more than 20 years in prison, today Ricky Kidd walked free. He was wrongly accused of a double homicide in KC, and he has fought for this freedom ever since.
I'm actually walking in a free society that I should have never been taken out of in the first place. So
tonight, Kidd had his first meal outside of prison in 23 years. He sat with family members at Jack Stack Barbecue in the Crossroads.
Lawrence Callanan, 25 years.
My name is Lawrence Callanan, and I just spent 25 years in prison for a crime that I did not commit. I grew up in St. Louis in a blue-collar, middle-class, working-class family. Was a union construction worker.
Donald Nash, Benjamin Faust, Brad Jennings, Charles Jones III, David Robinson, Mike Wilkerson, Michael Amick, Ernest Leap, Russell Faria, Cornell McKay, Mark Woodworth, George Allen Jr., Ryan Ferguson, Reginald Griffin, Paula Hall, Robert Nelson, Richard Buckley II, Cody Smith, Dale Helmig, Gary Engel, Zachary Lee Stewart, Antoine Terry, Kenneth York, Joshua Kaiser, Daryl Burton, Antonio Beaver, Antoine Bankhead, Johnny Briscoe, Jennifer Hall, Theodore White Jr., Anthony Woods, Joseph Amrine, Lonnie Irby, Larry Johnson, James Bowman, Donald Dixon, Eric Clemens, John Keith Smith, Armand Villasana, David Clay Sr., Clarence Richard Dexter Jr., Ellen Reasonover, James Strughold, George Revelle, Stephen Toney, Johnny Lee Wilson, Patricia Stallings. All of these people wrongfully convicted and eventually exonerated in Missouri. The process can take a very long time and is fraught with traps. Missing a deadline by a day could be the difference between freedom and life in prison, or even death. And beside the procedure, there's another huge barrier to innocent people being released from prison, and that's Missouri's Attorney General. For the last 2 decades, despite how much evidence or support someone who's convicted in Missouri might have, Missouri's Attorney General fights to keep those innocent people in prison.
I do know that the Attorney General's office for a long time has had a practice of opposing every case, regardless of its merit. They think that their duty is to defend every judgment, no matter the justice of it.
Sean O'Brien is a law professor at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Even with new evidence that shows that the wrong person was convicted.
Even with new evidence.
Years ago, Joseph Amorine was scheduled to be executed despite the evidence mounting that he was wrongfully convicted. At Missouri's Supreme Court, a judge asked, "Are you suggesting, even if we find that Mr. Amorine is actually innocent, that he should be executed?" The Attorney General's response, "That is correct, Your Honor." Look at what's happening right now to Kevin Strickland. This year, because of how difficult the process is for innocent people to be released, the state legislature passed a new law permitting local prosecutors to go to judges directly and end the wrongful imprisonment. The law was designed to give the Attorney General some input into the process, but nowhere close to the power the Attorney General has had before the prosecutor-initiated process was put into law. Now, that hasn't stopped current Attorney General Eric Schmitt from using every tool he has to delay Kevin Strickland's hearing. On August 28th, the first day she could, the prosecutor in Jackson County asked the court to set aside Mr. Strickland's conviction and release him. The court set September 2nd for a hearing. On August 30th and 31st, Attorney General Eric Schmitt filed 3 motions, one to disqualify all of the judges in Jackson County, one to create a new case instead of using the original one, and one to continue the proceeding to a later date. When the judge ruled against the Attorney General, he asked the appellate court to intervene. The Attorney General successfully delayed Mr. Strickland's hearing, which only someone like the Attorney General would actually call a success. The Attorney General then filed more motions, a motion to take depositions, a motion to test fingerprints, a motion to take more depositions, a motion to exclude evidence he didn't like. It was as if the state didn't have 43 years to do all of these things. For all of that time, Kevin Strickland was sitting in a Missouri prison. Kevin Strickland was supposed to be heard on September 2nd. His mother's funeral was just days later. Instead, he will now be heard on November 8th, another 67 days in prison for a crime he did not commit. Missouri could make several changes. First, the Attorney General could start working with local law enforcement, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and families to make sure innocent people don't sit in prison for 40 years, or 30 years, or 20. Instead of using taxpayer money to keep innocent people in taxpayer-paid prisons, our Attorney General could do his job and seek justice in our state. Second, if the Attorney General won't do his job, our prosecutors should be able to fix the problem on their own, without his interference.
Lindsay Runnels, Johnson's attorney, and Tricia Rojo Bushnell, Strickland's lawyer, point out that in both cases, the real killers pleaded guilty and have already served their time for the murders.
How unusual is it in these cases that you as defense attorneys are in complete agreement with the prosecutors that your clients are innocent?
In Missouri, it's absolutely unusual. I can't think of another instance in which we've experienced that.
And in most states, when the prosecutor and defense attorney are in agreement, the inmate is released. So what's going on in the state of Missouri?
Everyone's favorite question. Third, we need to make sure that every person accused of a crime has access to effective representation. That means funding for our public defenders. Fourth, we need to make sure that people like Kevin Strickland receive at least some compensation for their time in prison. Right now, in Missouri, they don't receive anything.
Let's say he does get out. Does he get more than an apology?
In the state of Missouri, no. Under Missouri law, those who have been exonerated do not get compensation. It's another wrong.
In the end, it's about having officials in Missouri committed to justice.
What does justice look like?
What does justice look like? That's a tough one. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen it yet.
It sure doesn't look like this.